Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another riveting episode of the Gut Wrench Podcast. I'm your host, Mocha, and tonight, actually, this is going up on Friday night. Usually it goes up in the mornings, but I'm not going to tweet it until like tomorrow morning. I'm not sure, it really doesn't matter when I tweet it, to be honest. It's not going to get any interactions. My so-called friends aren't going to retweet it or respond to it or anything like that. Even though my friends have more followers than I do. Despite the fact that they post about, like, ooh, look at my new shoes. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's cool, but, what about my new content? Like, I'm supporting you over here with your new shoes and your new nipple ring. What about me? Like, I retweet your nipple ring, but you don't retweet my nipple ring? Nonetheless, but what I would like to do now is talk about what today's episode's going to be. So, contrary to popular belief, I actually do care about what's happening today in professional wrestling. And today we're not going to talk about some irrelevant pay-per-view that happened 20 years ago. I'm not going to be reviewing some match with Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair that took 25 minutes to put pen to paper. I'm not going to talk about the controversy that happened in 1994 or last week, for that matter. I'm going to talk about Sorry, I thought I heard someone calling my name from upstairs. For those of you who don't know, I live downstairs in my house. But I'm probably going to be moving upstairs, from what I'm told. But nonetheless, what I mean to... Oh, there's that word again. But nonetheless. Not nonetheless. None the less. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about what's happened recently in professional wrestling. Now, before I did the Undertaker episode that I did last week, I wanted to talk about Impact Wrestling. And I wanted to review one of their pay-per-views called Slammiversary, like 17 or 18, or it was like XX11V or something like that. Slammiversary, if you don't know, is like their version of WrestleMania. And WrestleMania, if you don't know, is supposed to be the top of the mountain as far as professional wrestling goes. But it's really not. Because it's boggled down by so much dog shit that it's hard to really keep up with. It's almost like WrestleMania nowadays, instead of it being like months and months of work to get to a climax of a story that's been building for weeks and weeks or months and months. Like, used to, there was a climax to a story that would build over time. Let me give you an example. The Rock, he's your champion, right? So, their next question would be, who's going to face The Rock at WrestleMania? And then they would put their top guys and a few jobbers. They would put them together, and then they would say, okay, so who out of you do you think should... They would listen to a combination of the fans that they had, and they would listen to their superstars. Now, their superstars would give an unbiased opinion on who they think should main event the headline show, WrestleMania. And usually, like, The Undertaker one time vouched for Steve Austin. Told The Rock he thinks that Austin should be his next competitor, that he's seen Austin work, and that he's been doing, great strides in the ring, and that he thinks that those two would make magic together, and boy was he right. But nonetheless, what I mean to say is the fact that that's not what you get nowadays, and especially in the WWE. No long-term booking goals. That's what the WWE lacks. They lack no storytelling whatsoever. And for that matter, Cody Rhodes got fined. Here's something that I read up on. Cody Rhodes got fined for the fact that he said in an interview with The Miz on Miz TV, whenever he was talking to The Miz like a week before their match at WrestleMania, or not at WrestleMania, on Monday Night Raw. I'm sorry, it wasn't WrestleMania. WrestleMania, he faced Seth Rollins. But anyway, what ended up happening was, The Miz had to correct him a few times. He kept calling the performers in the WWE, I'm going to put this in air quotes, wrestlers. They are not wrestlers. What they are is they are called superstars. And he kept calling the wrestling, and they kept calling it, oh, no, that wasn't it. It was a championship belt. He called it a belt. And The Miz said, no, that's not a belt, that's a title. He said a belt is something you wear around your waist to hold your pants up. And that brings me to another joke that I'd heard a million times. You know how I know that wrestling's fake? They fight for belts, but none of them wear pants. Which is a joke I've probably told a million times over. Sorry about that. There's literally a frog in my throat. So, I'm not French or anything, and I don't like to eat frogs, but if somebody could call the ASPCA and save this fucking tadpole in my throat, that would be wonderful. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that you can't split hairs like that. You can't call wrestling entertainment, because even though it is entertainment, it's not meant to be looked at like it's a child's cartoon. Saturday morning cartoons, Hulk Hogan used to have this freaking cartoon that came on on Saturday mornings. Hulk Hogan, believe it or not, used to have these restaurants called, like, pasta, or... Holy crap. Like I said, I wasn't really planning on talking about... At this point, I've got nothing to talk about, actually, because I don't have any notes in front of me. I'm not going to be reviewing any matches, believe it or not. I'm going to talk about what's modern, what's hip, and what's in the news today as far as professional wrestling goes. Or at least I'm going to do my best to try to keep up with what's modern, what's hip, and what's in the news today as far as professional wrestling goes for the next 50 minutes. For those of you who aren't in the know-how, or for that matter, for those of you who don't really understand what it is that I'm talking about, It's politics in professional wrestling. One such thing is the fact that the Intercontinental Championship and the United States Championship, two title belts that need no introduction, but I should have to remind everyone that I guess the WWE, even though they've, for years, and I mean for years, they've built this reputation for the United States Championship and for the Intercontinental Championship. But once the biggest show of the year, their words not mine, shows up, what did they have to deliver? Sami Zayn versus Johnny Knoxville. Why? Because earlier in the year, Johnny Knoxville got in Sami Zayn's face during the Royal Rumble event, or during the Royal Rumble match, rather. For those of you who aren't aware of what the Royal Rumble is, and I don't mean to try to demean, or for that matter, insult the intelligence of, like, I'm not trying to insult the intelligence of those wrestling fans that are listening, but I have non-wrestling fans who listen to my podcast, believe it or not. So I'm going to have to explain what the Royal Rumble is. The Royal Rumble is an event in which that 30 men compete in an over-the-top elimination battle royal of sorts. And every 90 seconds, the last time that I checked at least, it's every 90 seconds. Every 90 seconds, someone new comes into the match. So on frequent occasion, unless you've eliminated someone, you could fill up a wrestling ring full of 30 superstars. That's what they want you to call them, superstars. Once again, their words, not mine. Wrestling politics. But, you know, apparently Johnny Knoxville got in Sami Zayn's grill, or eliminated him, or something stupid. Sorry if you heard that burp, that was me actually about to throw up, thinking about Sami Zayn in the Royal Rumble. He doesn't even deserve the opportunity. But, and there is a but, and it's a big one. Sami Zayn facing off against Johnny Knoxville, and that was a comedy act, for those of you who don't know, because I don't know his real name, Wee Man got into the match, and whenever he did, for whatever reason, Wee Man, I'm pretty sure, bit Sami Zayn, or smacked him, or something. I only call it highlights. I almost said whole lights. Friend of mine ends up messaging me on Twitter. He says, something for you to rant about on your podcast. It's supposed to be Drew versus Sami Zayn at Backlash. I should preference that by saying he means to say it's supposed to be Drew McIntyre versus Sami Zayn at Backlash. Now, usually Backlash is their pay-per-view after WrestleMania. Once again, this is wrestling politics. It makes no sense whatsoever in a consistent booking manner that Sami Zayn would face off against Drew McIntyre. McIntyre, who has main evented on more than one occasion many different areas in the WWE. McIntyre, who has been a media outlet juggernaut, someone who shows up to practically every show that they want to promote him on. Drew McIntyre is a monster of a man. 275 pounds, 6'2", 6'3.5", I really don't know what more to say about the man, other than the fact that he's just the Scottish psychopath. That's just what they call him. That's what he is. And he is a brute. A brute. He makes small men look even smaller in comparison. Sami Zayn, however, reminds me of a bag of Jell-O in the fact that, you can probably push it around a few times and then it's fun. I mean, he's not a physical specimen, and there's nothing entertaining about him either. Sami Zayn is about as entertaining as watching a cockroach in the blender, as long as you got the lid on the blender, that way the cockroach can't jump out. And you don't push the button. Don't push the button on the blender. You just watch the cockroach just go around and around and around and around. Like, bro, what are you doing? It's one of those, anomalies. Also, for a later time, let's go ahead and get this one out of the way. Even though the Intercontinental Championship, was not defended, and almost said Universal, and the United States Championship was not defended, we did see new tag team champions. Women's tag team champions. Let me tell you why that's a bad idea. Okay, so WWE's women's division is already small enough. The women don't get that much airtime to begin with. So, had that been the case, does it make sense? Does it make sense? I want someone to answer this for me, please. Whether you answer it internally, whether you answer it to me on Twitter, on my Instagram, on my Facebook, which I'm never on. Not the point. I want you to answer me if the women of the professional wrestling organization that we're going to talk about, WWE, barely get any screen time. They maybe get one match on a usual 3-hour show, sometimes 2 matches on a usual 3-hour show, because it's such a male-dominated sport. If they're lucky, they'll get 2 matches on a male-dominated, on a 3-hour cycle of a weekly show that happens. Tell me why, not to sound like the Backstreet Boys or anything, but tell me why it makes sense to put a women's tag team division championship, because that's a smaller subset of an already small subset. Tell me where your woman's singles championship lays between the ever amazing collection of the tag teams that you're going to have to form in order to make the women's tag team division relevant. You see, it worked over in Impact Wrestling, but it worked for a different reason. Because they already had women in a tag team setting. They were constantly, before the Knockouts tag team titles came to be, I'm almost certain that they were constantly putting their women in tag team matches to begin with. And it worked for Impact Wrestling because the beautiful people of Angelina Love, Madison Rayne, and Velvet Sky were all three putting on great performance after great performance after great performance. But now it's almost like they just forced it on them. They said, hey, you all want to be in WrestleMania, right? We can't give you a singles match opportunity, but what we can do is we can bring back this irrelevant title and we can make it relevant again. Holy crap. You can't be serious right now. Also, something that I chuckled at was Matt Cardona on Twitter. For whatever reason, he said he loves the internet, and they made a post that was like breaking news, and showed a picture of Matt Cardona, and he had like 5 championship belts over each shoulder, and then the breaking news headline reads, Matt Cardona asks not to be involved in any more championship matches because he's already won too many championships. He's like, no more championship opportunities, please. Now, I'm pretty sure Cardona doesn't even have a title right now, and I could be wrong about that. Just a little funny thing to end on after hearing something as abysmal as what we just heard. But not only was it the beautiful people, but it was also all of these ladies who put together all these great tag teams that eventually Madison Rayne went away from the beautiful people and she started calling herself the Queen or something like that, and she started brainwashing people into thinking that she was royalty, into thinking that she was some higher, I won't say power, but some higher woman, like some sort of princess or queen or and whenever she did that, she tried to elevate not only herself, but also the women's division that they were in. And not Madison Rayne, Velvet Sky and Angelina Love had to find a way to, how are we going to stop her? Oh my God, she's got Tara wrapped around her finger. And Tara's this big, body of a woman who won't take hell from no one. Fuck everybody else, I'm Tara, But it worked in Impact Wrestling because they knew how to evolve with it. Impact Wrestling has been on the verge of death on more than one occasion. And you would figure with them almost going out of business 14 or 18 or 25 times, that they would eventually just cave and then just say, oh, no, we can't do this anymore. And for that matter, you would figure, seeing as though that, the wrestlers who were in Impact Wrestling, the wrestling company before they worked at Impact Wrestling was like WWE, and WWE reportedly, overpays them like a whole lot. Like, take Kurt Angle, for example. Angle, who, whenever he first came to the WWE, was undefeated until the Royal Rumble 2000, which was a match that we looked at, where Taz choked him out. And there was a lot of controversy behind that because, like I said, I wasn't going to talk about a pay-per-view that's more than 20, 25 years old, but stick with me here, I'm going somewhere with it. Until Taz choked him out, and then there was a whole lot of controversy behind the whole, hey, you choked me out, he can't choke me out, that's illegal. Well, it's illegal in the world of professional wrestling. It's not really like Taz wasn't going to go to jail for choking out Kurt Angle. And like I stated on that show, Rumble 2000, I remember saying something along the lines of, it didn't look illegal to me. It looked like it was a choke, like an illegal choke in professional wrestling is not a sleeper hold. So if they have you in a sleeper hold, then that's not illegal. And for that matter, the referee didn't call it an illegal choke, and he didn't say that it was a disqualification. I need to catch my breath. Hang on. What the referee did do was say that Kurt Angle tapped out. For some reason, they kept saying that it was an illegal choke. I'm not really sure why. My point is, whenever Kurt Angle came over to the WWE, he was undefeated. He had this great, I'm a bright new young kid coming over from the Olympics, and then whenever he settled there for a few years, he became a legend, despite the fact that the whole "you suck" chant, despite the fact that he couldn't get along with Steve Austin whenever he first showed up to the WWE, who was at the time their top star. He couldn't get along with Edge for the longest time, just because of that whole "what" chant, which was the combination of Edge, Christian, and Steve Austin, who adapted that chant, and I don't talk about a chant like we're, chanting Muslim backwards or something. What I mean to say is that you would figure, with Kurt Angle working there for so long, and people like Sting working there in some capacity for so long, that they would have enough money in their bank account to where they would be like, hey, this wrestling company that hired me because I didn't like it over in WWE, this wrestling company that just got done hiring me, it's about to go under. I'm not going to let that happen. And then just pull out money from, his bank account and then be like, hey, TNA manager, here's, $450,000. I don't want to see this company go under. What the hell? But instead of doing that, there were reports constantly, like Hellfire reports of Impact Wrestling about to go under. Like, my question was, why? They had a good product. They had a good, I'm talking about them like they're dead, but, Impact Wrestling is still alive and well. And for that matter, with their new TV deal on Access Television, they might be doing better than ever, according to some reports. And I know that I've been jumping from subject to subject to subject to subject and making constant jokes and stuff of that nature. Like I said, I have no format in front of me right now, and I'm really not trying to cover for time. One thing that I am trying to do, though, is find things to talk about. And I knew that I had a few things that I wanted to talk about in the modern wrestling, like the modern wrestling light. One such thing, rather. I'd asked a friend of mine if Drew McIntyre was at a WrestleMania match, and he said he fought Corbin. He said it was okay. He said it was an okay match. So I'll take his word for it. And another thing that I wanted to bring up was Samoa Joe, who recently got hired by AEW as an extension of Ring of Honor. Now, in a previous episode, I talked about how Ring of Honor was the first place that CM Punk was introduced to professional wrestling. You see, CM Punk, who, for one reason or another, had a great grandiose appearance in WWE. And for that matter, he made a lasting impression on all of the wrestling fans that come to know him as Chicago Made Punk, Chick Magnet Punk. CM Punk now works for AEW, and his feud with MJF, they took it about as far as they could. You remember earlier whenever I was talking about long-term booking? Well, we're going to get back into that discussion right now. Because long-term booking-wise, this whole MJF feud with Wardlow is going beautifully. You see, 2 weeks before MJF faced off against CM Punk, this is what I call picture-perfect storytelling. 2 weeks before CM Punk was scheduled to face off against MJF in a dog collar match. A match that, if you'll remember, we reviewed. Now, I don't have my notes in front of me, so I couldn't tell you what I rated that match, and for that matter, it would probably take me way too long to find it. And I remember watching and reviewing this match, thinking it's not going to go anywhere, like either Punk's going to win or MJF is going to win or someone's going to end up. Well, I really don't see a double disqualification on a dog collar match. It's hard to really see that because they just wanted to make it to where you could see the fact that MJF wasn't running and CM Punk wasn't going to let him run away. The point that I'm trying to make is 2 weeks before their dog collar match, you had this, let's take it 3 weeks before their dog collar match, you had this man in the ring running his mouth, talking about how next week, which would have made it 2 weeks before their dog collar match, but talking about next week he's going to finally shut up CM Punk, how he's going to put CM Punk, he's going to put the last nail in CM Punk's coffin, and there's not a goddamn thing he can do about it except nothing and like it. Well, fast forward a week later, 2 weeks before the dog collar match, and the chairman, Shawn Spears, gets into the ring with CM Punk, and what ends up happening is hilarious. Because it's maybe less than 30 seconds goes by. CM Punk kicks him in the head, picks up his limp body, and then GTS's puts him over his shoulder and then hits the GTS and then pins him. 1, 2, 3. Pinfall victory. CM Punk wins. If it was Mortal Kombat, they would have said fatality. He just went to sleep. Because that's what GTS, go to sleep. But anyway, had that been the case, Shawn Spears was out of the picture. CM Punk then turns his attention to MJF himself. And MJF runs down to the ring, if I remember correctly, gets into the ring. Punk dares him to get into the ring, but what happens? He gets attacked by Wardlow. Wardlow then Now, this was either 2 weeks before their dog collar match, or it was 1 week before their dog collar match. But I remember CM Punk had MJF's scarf. He had his scarf, and then for some reason he wears a scarf everywhere. I guess it's just to be like, hey, look at me, I'm Rico Suave, look how rich I am, I can afford accessories, you know, look at my sunglasses, look how many rings I got, you know. Speaking of rings, that's exactly how CM Punk won his match. But, you know, that's not the point. The point is, and I mean to say this, the absolute best thing happened. You could see the cracks forming between MJF and Wardlow early on, because when Wardlow went to powerbomb CM Punk, he had 3 or 4 people in his face. He had the chairman, Shawn Spears. He had Wardlow had MJF, and Wardlow had like the inner circle in his face, telling him to powerbomb. He was being told like 3 or 4 times by Powerhouse Hobbs and the chairman, Shawn Spears, and MJF, practically telling, hey, powerbomb his ass. Powerbomb him. Do it. Powerbomb him. Come on. Chop, chop, Junior, powerbomb. You know, like they were calling for it. They were calling for that big man to powerbomb CM Punk. And Punk was out of it, practically. And MJF was like, what the... Who are you? You gonna tell me what to do? But then he was like, okay, fine, I'll powerbomb him. But come... Once the damn match itself happened, both men were bleeding, both men were thirsty for, I mean, the fans were thirsty for more, despite the fact that, you know, I mean, they're bloodthirsty animals, let's be honest. But both men were bleeding, they were weak at the legs, they could barely stand, for that matter. The match was a success, and for that matter, it was a good storyline mechanic that they brought forth. And the one thing that was poetic justice was the fact that usually MJF ends his matches a certain way. He'll have Wardlow look for that diamond ring, whatever sort of ring, and he usually uses it to punch his opponents in the face for whatever reason. And he goes to look for that ring and he can't find it. He can't find the ring. He doesn't know where it's at. And then whenever MJF's back is turned, all of a sudden Wardlow finds the ring, the aforementioned ring that he was looking for. And wouldn't you know it, poetic justice, he gives it to his opponent instead of giving it to the person who's supposed to finish the match that way. And ironically, he ends up hitting him in the head with his own ring after CM Punk asks him if he would like to apologize. He spits in his face. Infinitely better storytelling, and for that matter, it took practically 3 to 4 weeks to get there. Long-term booking goals have been achieved, and now they're working on the feud between the two, MJF and... See, CM Punk already beat him, so there's no point for MJF to go back and fight CM Punk. So now he's focusing more on the person who betrayed him during the match between MJF and CM Punk. Wardlow. As I said before, I don't really have, or I should say, I don't mean to insult the intelligence by recapping something with those of you who are wrestling fans coming here to hear something new or something fresh, like a breath of fresh air as far as perspective goes. And I know a lot of you are thinking, well, if they're not wrestling fans, what are they doing listening to this podcast? You know, that's a good question. That's a really, really good question. But if I could jump on the bandwagon for 1 second, not to say that, I don't want to how do I say this? I don't want to keep beating a dead horse and say what's already been said as far as professional wrestling news outlets go, but I'm going to beat the dead horse right now by saying the following phrase. Congratulations. Congratulations are in order for Samoa Joe, who recently signed with AEW, and with AEWs, he also signed with Ring of Honor. He is the new Ring of Honor television heavyweight champion of the world. And for that matter, congratulations is in order. Because the fact that he's, the man's been wrestling for so long. And it's good to see that he's back, finally. After being fired twice within a year from the same company that hired him and promised him a job. After shenanigans over in Impact Wrestling. Another rumor that I was aware of, that I'd been told, is that, you know how we talked about Impact Wrestling almost going under? Well, AEW apparently has rumors that they are about to go under. Or at least that's what it was a few weeks ago. Tony Khan. Oh, and also I should talk to Cody Rhodes too. Tony Khan. Please, for the love of God, stop sticking people. So, in a nutshell, Tony Khan owns this big conglomerate wrestling company, practically. He's trying to micromanage not only the company itself, but also like a roster of maybe well over 200 people. Now that he bought out Ring of Honor. Wow. I just pulled a booger out my nose and it's like 3 inches long. But anyway. Tony Khan. You need to slow down, man. You really need to slow down. I'm not sure what it is that's driving this man to do as much as he's doing right now. But the good news is he's got something that I've never seen before. He's bought out Ring of Honor, and he's practically made it an extension of, and he's working with other wrestling promoters like New Japan Pro Wrestling, which I'm not opposed to, because Jon Moxley within the last year or the last year and a half was the IWGP was it the United States champion? Which is funny that they should have a United States champion, because aren't they based only in Japan? Why would they have a United States championship unless it's like one of those things that WWE used to do, which they still do today, but on a lower scale. They have this thing called the European Championship, and used to they would defend it in European countries, and for that matter, they would. I mean, it started like that, but then other people got a hold of it, and I guess creative took it to another direction, because used to it was only like William Regal. It was like a few select people could. The British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, used to people like that could only hold the European Championship because, of course, they're from Europe. I mean, that would make the most sense, right? But I don't think that was the case in later years. It's hard to really gauge where it was at the time, or for that matter, if what I'm saying is really true, but that's what I feel like, that it, because they did have a lot of European talent coming over, because I'm pretty sure China held it at one time. In China, I'm not sure where she's from, but don't say Asia. She's not from any Asia country. I know, once again, I don't mean to say that in a, like, I'm not trying to, I feel like the record stops every time that I have to explain this again. Like, if I could find that sound effect, that'd be great. But what I mean to say is, I'm not trying to insult the intelligence of my wrestling fans. If you came here to like, oh yeah, let's just chill out, listen to a wrestling podcast from a pay-per-view that happened 20 years ago, you know? What? But what I mean to say is the fact that I'm pretty sure China held the title, and, you know, because she held, like, the hardcore title, she held, like, the women's championship, she held, like, a few other championships that were supposed to be, I mean, she was the first female to enter the Royal Rumble, and we just talked about what that was, like a 30-man, over-the-top battle royal, and they only, like, recently did, like, hey, here's the women's rumble, yay, for the girls. I mean, if they can, which usually they just have people come out to fill spots, like, hey, there's Alundra Blaze, we haven't seen her in 25 years, what's she doing here? Like, oh, you know why she's here? It's because your women's division's so small, you jackass. We just got done talking about that, too. Why would you make, like, this is the part that really doesn't, I really, honestly don't understand this. And honestly, I'm not trying to fill time anymore. I could stop this at any point. But, why would you take an even smaller subset? That would be like saying, okay, we're going to have a women's championship, but it's only available to pregnant women on Tuesday, on every third day of the year. So I'll call you, you know, like, don't do that. Don't. Honey. We need to have a talk. We need it. This is an intervention. We need to have a talk. But I mean to say is that it's not a smart idea. It's not a smart idea. I wanna say more about it, but I feel like I've already said all that there needs to be said about it. I'm really uncertain about what exactly I should say, except for the fact Kevin Owens had a match with Steve Austin at WrestleMania. And honestly, I was worried. I was worried that it wasn't going to, for real, I thought that it was just going to be a talk show segment. And I didn't think for 1 second that they was going to turn it into a wrestling match, because according to the Wrestling Observer, Austin wasn't scheduled to have a match. And for that matter, he was supposed to only have... Well, he did report that Austin wasn't supposed to have a match. He said that, not even a month before the match was announced. But he was just supposed to talk. It was just supposed to be a talk show type deal, type interview type thing. And honestly, I would give it 2 out of 5 stars if I reviewed the match. No, I didn't watch the match. I didn't. I would almost give it 3 stars. Almost. I would almost say that it's a halfway decent performance. Almost. You see, the thing is with Steve Austin matches, the crowd was chanting, "You still got it." They were right. Austin still got it. He was selling like hell for Owens when Owens would do something, and you could tell that Kevin was being extremely careful with Steve. He was being overly cautious. Austin had him in a corner at one time, and the referee was counting, and Austin was stomping a mud hole in him, like true Steve Austin fashion. The last time that I seen AJ Styles and Kevin Owens in a match together, and of course I only seen highlights because I refuse to watch a Kevin Owens match, no matter who else participates in it. But nonetheless, what I mean to say is, when I seen that AJ Styles and Kevin Owens match, and that was at the Royal Rumble a few years ago, 2018, 2019, one of the two. What I mean to say is AJ put on a hell of a performance, even with someone who's lackadaisical at best, or mediocre at best. And AJ really knows how to carry a match, and so does Steve Austin. So I would almost give both of those performances, if I had to rate them, if I had to rate a Kevin Owens match where Kevin was being carried and living off of the performance of someone else, giving him the highlights and making him look good, I would give them, and this would have to be 3 out of 5 stars. You heard me correctly. I technically, I gave Kevin Owens. I rated 2 of his matches. One, which was a Royal Rumble match that happened. Not only was it Kevin Owens, but also it featured Sami Zayn. The joke was that they were going to be co-champions, and there was a stipulation that AJ could lose to either one of them, but no matter who he lost to, they would be co-champions, which in hindsight sounds like, a little bit of fuckery. And it was supposed to be a handicap match, but the only problem is they don't do handicap matches like they used to back in the day. Back in the day, whenever you was in a handicap match, you want to know what that meant? That meant you got your ass kicked by 2 or 3 guys at the same time. They would all 3 surround you and then just manhandle you practically. But nowadays, in a handicap match, your partner just waits outside until you tag them in. So whenever I first watched that, or at least the highlights, I was like, what the hell? Thought that this was supposed to be a handicap match. Why is Sammy on the outside of the ring? What's he doing? Like, I didn't understand the mechanic that they were going for at the time. And the Steve Austin match, whenever they took it out into the crowd, like I said, I probably got a frog in my throat. It's just ribbit. And what I mean to say is the fact that Steve Austin really put on a hell of a performance, despite the fact that he had to work with a sack of shit. I've said this once, and I'm going to say it again. You can spray paint a turd with golden spray paint. Still a turd. Don't matter what you do to it. You can step in it. Still, it's a golden turd. It's exactly what it is. That's exactly what Kevin Owens is. He's a golden turd. Not sure why he's golden. He still smells like shit. He still wrestles like shit. He still looks like shit. He still talks like shit. I don't want to say that he walks like shit, because I don't really know what shit would walk like if it were to grow legs. I would assume it would do a Kevin Owens, Like, hey, that's the Kevin Owens walk. Everybody knows that from the internet. Hang on, I gotta sneeze. I got no light to look at. But what I mean to say is that if I had to, under certain circumstances, I'm going to hate to say this because I haven't been wrong in 8 years. 8 years. The first thing that I was wrong about was that goddamn Daniel Bryan bullshit, which I'm still not over. Because the fact is that I thought that Bryan was a bust because he had no talent. That's what I kept saying. Because he had no microphone skills. And for that matter, he had absolutely nothing going for him. I was like, look at this guy. He's probably going to fizzle out in 2 weeks. He won't even last past lunchtime. much that I can almost guarantee you. Daniel Bryan. Who is Daniel? Shit, get him out of here. Ain't nobody care about who Daniel Bryan is. At the time, I hadn't done anything with Ring of Honor. I hadn't looked at them in a clear and concise light. And for that matter, I didn't realize it at the time, but Bryan was actually, I won't say good, because nothing about the character Daniel Bryan was really good. It wasn't until he hit AEW that I finally seen why people think, or why people know, rather, that he's a top talent. But in WWE, they made him look awful. And I mean just fucking terrible. It's been nice talking to everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to thank you so much for the content that you guys listen to, that you provide to me, the numbers, I should say. I'm going to go ahead and end this episode now, and that is a wrap. Because I got nothing else to talk about.